Story 1. The Curse of Salem's Dark Magic, 1692, Salem, Massachusetts. Salem was drowning in fear, suspicion lurking in every shadow. The infamous witch trials were at their peak, and the line between superstition and reality blurred with every passing day. A mere whisper of witchcraft could seal your fate. Among the fearful townsfolk lived Lena Graves, a reclusive woman with piercing black eyes and an aura that seemed to repel even the bravest souls. Rumors swirled about her, strange lights seen near her cottage, odd symbols etched into her door, and the chilling fact that crops near her home always flourished, even when others withered. The villagers claimed she was a witch, but Lena was something far more dangerous. She was the last of an ancient bloodline, a keeper of forbidden knowledge passed down through generations. Elena possessed the ability to manipulate the elements, summon spirits, and even speak with the dead. Her magic wasn't born of evil. It was power rooted in the ancient, primal forces of the world. But power, misunderstood and feared, often becomes a target. When Abigail Canningham, the beloved daughter of Salem's most influential leader, fell gravely ill without explanation, the town needed a scapegoat. Fear turned to rage, and rage turned toward Elena. They dragged her from her cottage, accusing her of witchcraft. The trial was a farce, her fate sealed before the first accusation was spoken. Standing on the pyre, surrounded by faces twisted in hatred, Elena didn't scream or beg. She stared into the crowd with eyes burning with defiance. As the flames licked at her feet, she uttered her final words, a curse spoken in a language older than Salem itself. "You may burn my flesh, but my spirit will linger. My blood seeps into your soil, my voice carried by the wind. Salem will never be free of me." As her body turned to ash, the sky darkened unnaturally, and a cold wind swept through the town square. Some claimed they heard whispers in that wind, voices promising revenge. But the real terror wouldn't come until centuries later. 1992, modern Salem. 300 years had passed, but the town of Salem remained a place where history never truly faded. Emma Holloway, a bright history student fascinated by the witch trials, arrived with her best friend Nathan Clark to research the infamous events. They explored old libraries, dusty archives, and even the execution grounds where accused witches met their tragic ends. In the basement of an abandoned church, hidden behind a false wall, Emma discovered an ancient, leather-bound book, its cover etched with symbols that pulsed faintly in the dim light. The title read, "The Grimoire of Lena Graves." The moment Emma touched it, a strange chill crept through her veins, and for a fleeting second she thought she heard a whisper, "Set me free." Curiosity overwhelmed her fear. That night, in the flickering glow of candlelight, Emma opened the grimoire. The pages were filled with cryptic runes and strange drawings. Despite not knowing the language, she somehow understood the words, as if they were being whispered directly into her mind. She began to read aloud, unknowingly reciting an incantation meant to awaken a spirit long thought lost. From that night on, everything changed. Emma's dreams turned dark, filled with images of fire, screaming faces, and a shadowy figure with piercing black eyes. She grew distant, her once bright personality dulled by something lurking beneath the surface. Nathan noticed her reflection didn't always match her movements, sometimes smiling when she wasn't. The final straw came when Nathan found Emma standing in the woods late at night, barefoot and whispering to the trees in an ancient language. Her eyes, no longer the warm brown he knew, were pitch black. When he confronted her, Emma's voice was layered, as if two people were speaking at once. "She's awake," she whispered. "Elena is awake." Nathan realized too late, the grimoire wasn't just a book, it was a prison. And Emma had set Elena's spirit free. Desperate to save his friend, Nathan scoured the grimoire, searching for a way to reverse the ritual. He found a binding spell, a chance to trap Elena's spirit again, but it required performing the rite at the place of her execution. Armed with nothing but the book and hope, Nathan dragged Emma, now almost entirely consumed by Elena's spirit, to the old Salem execution grounds. The night was stormy, lightning cracking the sky as if nature itself was warning them. Emma fought like an animal, her strength unnatural. Nathan began the incantation, his voice trembling but determined. Shadows gathered around them, twisting into forms with hollow eyes and gaping mouths, specters bound to Elena's curse. Emma's body contorted unnaturally as Elena fought to break free. Nathan's voice grew louder, defying the howling wind and the deafening whispers in his ears. Just as Elena's spirit tried to fully consume Emma, Nathan shouted the final words of the spell. A blinding light erupted from the book, pulling the shadows and Elena's spirit screaming back into its pages. Emma collapsed, her body limp but alive. Nathan held her, tears mixing with the rain. She opened her eyes, the warm brown returning, though a faint shadow lingered within them. Nathan buried the grimoire deep beneath the old execution grounds, sealing it within an iron box, surrounded by salt and protective symbols. But as he covered the final patch of dirt, he felt a cold breath against his neck and heard a whisper that would haunt him forever. "You can't bury me forever." And somewhere, deep within Salem's soil, Elena Graves waited. Because in Salem, the past never truly dies. Story 2. The Black Mark, Salem's Curse. 1692, Salem, Massachusetts. Salem was a town drowning in fear and suspicion, where shadows whispered of witchcraft and paranoia grew like weeds. During the infamous witch trials, fear was the strongest currency, and it bought the lives of the innocent. In the heart of this hysteria lived Annora Blackwood, a woman with knowledge of forbidden arts, herbal remedies, ancient sigils, and whispers of the old world's magic. These secrets had been passed down through generations of women in her family. But Salem saw none of that. To them, she was a witch. Annora was different. Her raven black hair, piercing green eyes, and the way she spoke softly to the woods made her an outsider. When crops failed, livestock died, or sickness spread, the town needed someone to blame. And that someone was Annora. She was dragged from her cottage, bound in rough ropes, and paraded through the village square as the crowd jeered, "Witch! Witch!" At her trial, false witnesses claimed she consorted with the devil, danced under the blood moon, and cursed their children. Annora remained silent until the day of her execution. Standing on the gallows with a noose tightening around her neck, she finally spoke, not to plead for her life, but to curse Salem. "You fear what you do not understand, but fear is a seed. It grows. My death will water it, and from that soil my spirit shall rise. I will return, not as a woman, but as a shadow stitched with black magic. This land will never forget me." As the trapdoor fell, a sudden crack of thunder shattered the clear sky. Annora's body died, but her curse did not. Present day, Salem, Halloween night. Modern Salem had transformed its dark past into a spectacle. Witch-themed shops, haunted tours, and costume parades attracted thousands every October. But beneath the plastic masks and tourist attractions, something ancient still slept, waiting. Lena Carter, a skeptical journalist from Boston, arrived to cover the Halloween festivities. To her, Salem was just a place profiting from its own grim history. Witches, curses, and ghosts were nothing more than stories. That was until she met Caleb Foster, a local historian obsessed with the true dark history of Salem, stories never told on the tourist tours. Caleb claimed there was one witch whose tale was deliberately buried, Annora Blackwood. Intrigued, Lena followed Caleb into the forgotten woods on the outskirts of town. Hidden beneath twisted roots and decaying leaves, they discovered an ancient stone slab etched with strange dark symbols, markings that pulsed with an energy Lena couldn't explain. Caleb believed it to be Annora's hidden grave, but it wasn't a grave. It was a seal, and they had just broken it. That night, Salem changed. The wind carried whispers, shadows stretched unnaturally long, and people reported sightings of a woman in black with glowing green eyes. Pets vanished, tourists disappeared without a trace, and flickering streetlights seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Lena dismissed it as Halloween hysteria until Caleb vanished. She found his apartment ransacked, the same dark symbols scorched into the walls. On his desk, a single note scrawled in shaky handwriting read, "She's awake. The black mark wasn't just a story, it's real, and she's coming." Determined to uncover the truth, Lena dug deeper into Annora's past. The more she learned, the more horrifying the story became. After Annora's execution, Salem was plagued by strange deaths. People found hanging from trees, drowned in dry wells, or burned from within without a single flame around them. The town had buried these stories, hoping the curse would stay forgotten. But the curse never died. It waited, and now Lena had awakened it. Through Caleb's research, Lena discovered that the symbols they found were part of an ancient ritual designed not to honor Annora, but to contain her. The seal had trapped her spirit, binding her rage. But with the seal broken, Annora's spirit was free, her black magic spilling into the world once more. Lena wasn't just a witness to the curse. She was part of it. She uncovered a terrifying truth. Lena was a descendant of one of the judges who sentenced Annora to death. The curse had been waiting for her bloodline to return to Salem. Desperate to stop the darkness, Lena sought help from Martha Huxley, an elderly woman whose family had guarded Salem's dark secrets for generations. Martha revealed that the only way to stop Annora was through blood, either Lena's or Annora's. On Halloween night, under a blood-red moon, Lena and Martha performed a forbidden ritual deep within the cursed woods. But Annora was already there, her shadow swirling like black smoke, her emerald eyes glowing with fury. "You carry the blood of my executioners," Annora hissed. "Your heart will be the final seal." The ground trembled as Annora's spirit closed in. But Lena didn't run. She stood firm, realizing that fighting Annora's magic was useless. The curse wasn't fueled by spells. It was fueled by fear, guilt, and hatred. So Lena did the unthinkable. She faced the darkness and spoke with conviction. "I carry their blood, but I am not them. I see you. I know your pain, and I am sorry." For the first time in over 300 years, Annora's rage wavered. The shadows flickered, her form fading like mist. With a final, echoing scream, Annora's spirit dissolved into the night, leaving only silence behind. The curse was broken, not by magic but by acknowledgement. But Salem would never be the same, because some darkness doesn't die, it waits. Story 3. The Devil's Mark, a Salem Haunting, 1692, Salem, Massachusetts. Salem was a town drowning in its own shadow, choked by fear, suspicion, and the heavy stench of paranoia. The witch trials raged like wildfire, consuming the innocent and guilty alike. In this boiling cauldron of hysteria lived Annora Blackwood, a healer with knowledge of herbs, potions, and ancient symbols, skills passed down through generations of women in her family. But Salem didn't see her as a healer. They saw a witch. Annora's only crime was being different. Her raven black hair, her strange green eyes that shimmered like emerald flames, and her tendency to speak softly to the woods, as if the trees listened. When crops failed, when sickness spread, the town needed someone to blame. Annora became their scapegoat. Dragged from her small cottage, she was chained and paraded through the town square. The crowd chanted, "Witch! Witch!" as stones and rotten food rained down upon her. At her trial, she remained silent, her eyes burning with a quiet fury as false witnesses accused her of consorting with the devil. On the day of her execution, as she stood on the gallows with a noose around her neck, she finally spoke, not to plead, but to curse. "You fear what you don't understand, but fear is a seed. It grows. My death will water it. My spirit will take root in Salem soil, and when the time is right, I will return, not as a woman, but as a storm." As the floor beneath her feet gave way, thunder cracked across a clear sky. Annora's body died, but her words lived on, and so did her curse. Present-day Salem. October 31st. Salem had turned its dark past into a spectacle. The witch trials were now tourist attractions, with haunted houses, reenactments, and spooky tours. But beneath the costumes and plastic skeletons, the town's true darkness still festered, waiting. Lena Carter, a cynical journalist from Boston, arrived in Salem to cover a Halloween story about the most haunted town in America. She didn't believe in ghosts, witches, or curses. To her, it was all marketing, a gimmick. That was until she met Caleb Foster, a local historian obsessed with the untold stories of Salem. Unlike the tour guides who dressed in cheap cloaks and exaggerated accents, Caleb's interest was genuine. He claimed there was one story the town refused to tell, the story of Annora Blackwood. Curious, Lena agreed to follow him to an abandoned part of the old Salem woods, far from the tourist paths. Hidden beneath tangled roots and crumbling stones, they found something chilling. A weathered stone slab marked with symbols Lena couldn't recognize, stained dark as if soaked in ancient blood. Caleb believed it was Annora's forgotten grave, but it wasn't a grave. It was a lock, and they had just opened it. That night, Salem changed. The wind howled with voices, windows shattered without cause, and shadows seemed to stretch and twist, even when no one moved. People reported seeing a woman in black with emerald green eyes, watching them from dark alleys. Pets went missing. Some tourists vanished entirely. Lena thought it was coincidence, until Caleb disappeared. She found his apartment wrecked, strange symbols scorched into the walls. On his desk was a note scribbled in panic. "The devil's mark has returned. I was wrong. It wasn't a story. It's real. She's real." Determined to find the truth, Lena dug into Annora's past. She discovered that after Annora's death, dozens of mysterious deaths plagued Salem. People found hanging from trees, drowned in shallow water, burned from the inside out. The town had buried these stories, scared to admit the curse was real. Following Caleb's notes, Lena traced the symbols back to an ancient ritual designed to bind a spirit to a place. But Caleb hadn't just found Annora's resting place. He had disturbed it, breaking the seal that had kept her fury at bay for over 300 years. Now, Annora's spirit wasn't just lingering. She was hunting. Lena realized that Annora's curse wasn't about revenge on the people who killed her. They were long dead. It was about the town itself. Salem's soil was poisoned with fear, and fear fed Annora's power. The more people panicked, the stronger she became. Desperate, Lena sought help from an unlikely source, an elderly woman named Martha Huxley, whose family had lived in Salem since the 1600s. Martha revealed a terrifying truth. Lena wasn't just reporting a story, she was part of it. Lena was a descendant of the judge who sentenced Annora to death. The curse had waited for her bloodline to return to Salem. Armed with this knowledge, Lena and Martha performed an ancient counter-ritual in the heart of the woods, under a blood-red moon. But Annora was there, her spirit a twisting shadow with burning green eyes. She whispered to Lena, "You carry the blood of my murderer. Your heart will be my final seal." The ground trembled as Lena faced her. She realized the only way to end the curse wasn't to fight Annora, but to accept her guilt, even if it wasn't her own. Lena offered herself, not out of fear, but out of understanding. "I'm sorry for what they did to you, but I am not them." For the first time in 300 years, Annora's rage faltered. The shadows recoiled, and the forest grew silent. With a final scream that echoed like shattered glass, Annora's spirit dissipated, her curse broken not by magic, but by acknowledgement. Lena survived, but Salem never truly healed, because in Salem, some scars are carved deeper than flesh, and beneath its tourist charm, something still waits in the dark.